Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs, as well as the games they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2016's Late Shift, a live-action interactive movie featuring an intense crime story, a lot of English accents, and an interesting electronic soundtrack.
Following that is the first full-fledged adventure for a PlayStation 4 tutorial character, which ended up setting a high standard for platforming in virtual reality, 2018's ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission. I think a pretty decent theme for these is like their twists on how video games can be represented. It's not all just control the character, go around an open world, beat up some enemies, that kind of thing. In the case of your game, interactive movies, that's certainly a niche of games. Whereas mine, I think it might be the first VR game we've talked about on the show.
I think so. Mine's the first FMV game. Well, it's not the first FMV game in general we have talked about, because Erica has been mentioned, but it's never been like the subject. And then, I don't think we've talked about a VR game before this.
Much less a VR platformer. So, it should be a good time. Joe, how you doing? What are you playing?
I'm doing all right. I am in the inverted castle in Symphony of the Night. So I'm getting there. I'm just about done. And past that, I haven't started Ghost of Tsushima yet. It's sitting in my PS4 right now. Like 5 feet away from me. It's installed and everything, and I just haven't gotten myself to start it quite yet. And still trucking along in Donkey Kong 64. A lot of bananas.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bananas.
Yeah, I bet first masterpiece is there. I'm about 4 to 5 hours in Ghost of Tsushima. It's a great time so far. I'm really liking it.
Ben is playing it a lot and seems to be having a good time.
Yeah, I can see how it's definitely a mishmash of different games from the last several years. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't really push the boundaries in like big, huge new ways, but I think it's a good capper for a generation, if you will. It's really interesting to see like the dynamics between like, oh, how are you playing? Are you doing English versus Japanese voiceover? Are you doing the full color or the Kurosawa black and white mode? It's interesting to see. I'm playing with Japanese and full color because I got a nice TV, so I want to see that color. But when you're playing Samurai in Japan, like you gotta have the Japanese voiceover with subtitles. And also, I guess the main character is voiced by the seiyuu who does Roronoa Zoro from One Piece. So I've heard.
I'll probably play in Japanese for the same reason I play Yakuza games in Japanese. It takes place in Japan. If the option's there, hey, why not?
Exactly. You gotta kind of keep it a little genuine there. So, yeah, good time there with Ghost of Tsushima. Let's talk about some composer follow-up headlines. What have the different composers we've talked about the show been up to? They've been making some news, different places here. First of all, we mentioned in a couple Uncharted episodes. We talked about Uncharted 3, Uncharted 4. We mentioned like there's that Hollywood film project. It'll never get off the ground. It's been years. It'll just never get off the ground. Well, apparently, the Uncharted movie is in production. Tom Holland may be on set tweeting a share of him and Nate, or Instagramming, whatever social network it was on. It's him showing a chair that says Nate. Oh boy, it could be happening. Don't like the whole idea of Mark Wahlberg as Sully though. Just saying. Yeah, I know it's supposed to be even younger, but I don't know about that. But it could be happening, everybody.
I'll believe it when I see a trailer. In other news, the soundtrack for a game that we have not talked about before, called Calico, is currently up for pre-order. I played this game at PAX. It's about magical girls running a cat cafe. That's pretty much the whole game. But the reason I bring it up is because the soundtrack features vocals by Emmy Evans, who, if you've been paying attention this was like a year ago that we talked about this, that she would have come up, but she did vocals on Nier Automata. She is featured on this soundtrack, as well as Emily Anderson. And you can find that soundtrack, you can pre-order it at slide20xx.bandcamp.com.
And then finally, Yakuza Kiwami 2. We've talked about that game on the show. It's hitting Xbox Game Pass this month. So if you're a Game Pass subscriber, go check out Yakuza Kiwami 2. I feel like we're also a bit premature on when talking about Dunk Lords. I thought it was a week or two ago. I thought like, oh, that's out on Games of Gold now. That should be out now. I think it was middle of July that it flipped over for that. But if you've been really hankering to try out Dunk Lords with music by Laura Shigihara, go also check it out. That should be on Xbox Games with Gold.
Yeah. And play Yakuza Kiwami 2. Play all the Yakuza games. Play all of them.
0, Kiwami, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we'll see what happens with 7 this year. Or Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Maybe one day we'll get an English release. And maybe I'll like it. I don't know. I'm really worried about that game. Anyways, let's talk about Late Shift. So, Late Shift was originally released for PC, PS4, and Xbox One on April 18th, 2017. It was then also released on Nintendo Switch on April 26th, 2018. It was developed by Control Movie, that is CTRL Movie, and published by Wales Interactive, who is actually in the news right now, because they are also publishing a very controversial game that does not look very good. That is also an FMV game. And if you pay attention to the news cycle, you know which one I'm talking about. Late Shift is a live-action interactive film, very reminiscent of older FMV titles, but a lot higher quality? Like, much higher quality. Now, we have never talked about an FMV game before. So I should probably explain what FMV means, because somebody listening who's not super into video games might not know. FMV stands for full motion video, and nowadays it just generally refers to a cutscene that is being run not in the game engine. So like it is something that was animated ahead of time and is basically the game playing a video file instead of having the game animate the characters in like real time, in game, etc., if that makes sense. But back in the day, back when I believe this term was invented, it might have been invented for this. I know that FMV was used for those pre-animated stuff around this time as well, but most consoles couldn't like do it. On stuff like the Sega CD or the Philips CDI, or I think that actually might have been it, for who like really tried to do a lot of FMV games. It basically stood for games that were built around live action footage. And those games usually sucked. One of the most famous of them is a game called Night Trap.
Night Trap!
And that game is not very good. I don't know if you've ever played it.
I haven't, but yeah, it and Mortal Kombat pushed the way for the ESRB in North America.
Yeah, that's the only reason anybody knows what Night Trap is now. That game was not successful until then, and now it is treated as an iconic part of gaming history, which in a way, it is. It just also sucks. But that's what FMV used to mean, and in a way still kind of means. It basically can be summed up as, it is a video file that the game is playing, essentially. So, for things similar to Late Shift specifically, I can actually point to a couple more modern examples. One being Erica, which we have talked about before because the music was done by Austin Wintory. But I think the more appropriate comparison is Netflix last year released a movie called Bandersnatch in the Black Mirror series. And it's very similar to that. So basically, as the movie plays out, the player is given a set of options to choose between. There are 180 total option choices in the game. It is not a very long game. and a time limit in which to choose, very similar to stuff like Telltale games where you have this timer. In Telltale, it would be like you just make no choice, you're silent. In this game, it's actually like it just chooses for you because the movie has to keep going. It's not like a video game where they can account for that kind of thing. The choices that you make will cause later sequences to play out differently, and different endings can occur. There are 7 total endings in the game. And in Late Shift, you are put in control of Matthew Thompson, yet another Matt in my life, a college mathematics student in London who is working nights as a parking garage attendant. One night, after attempting to stop a carjacking, he is unwillingly pulled directly into the center of a criminal plot to steal an artifact, a small rice bowl, from an auction. And to do this, he is paired with a young lady named Mei Ling, who he actually ends up befriending, possibly romantically, depending on your choices. But it is not long before Matt learns that he is way over his head in this, as this plot puts him and Mei Ling in the crosshairs of a powerful Chinese crime family known as the Choys, which I'm just now realizing, the Choys, the Choice.
Well, I didn't get that either.
I don't know if that's on purpose. So, can Matt and Mei Ling make it to the end of the night alive and not in jail? Or will they fall to this criminal underworld that they suddenly find themselves embroiled within? So this is where I'll ask, do you have any experience with Late Shift?
Not only do I have 0 experience with Late Shift, I had never heard of Late Shift. I guess the concept art, the key art that we have in our video thumbnail and whatnot, it looks pretty familiar, but the name has no recollection as far as oh yeah, that sounds familiar. No, I know 0 about Late Shift.
Yeah, that's about what I expected. Because I'm kind of the same with your game. So that's another theme today. Games the other person was not aware of. So I found out about this game because of the YouTuber Matt McMuscles. He used to be a member of the Super Best Friends Triumvirate. And he brought it up as it's nothing mind-blowing. It's nothing that's gonna blow you away. It's very short. The game's half an hour long for one run. The choices are kind of binary. It's, do you distract this guard or do you tell him that the guy you're supposed to distract him for is there? And that kind of thing. But the acting is very good. It's a very fun story, at least I think. And it's very fun to just sit in a room with a bunch of friends and you all make the decision together. I think that is the ideal sort of environment for this game to be played, is where it's not just you making the choices. It's a room discussing, and they have to move quick because there's a timer and you got to make that decision fast.
Makes sense.
It's fun. It's an interesting game. Not a lot of people have heard about it. It's available on basically everything. I mean, I'm not going to go out and say you're missing out so hard. I just find it to be interesting overall. So let's talk about the development of this game, the filming of this movie, because it's very weird to talk about this game for this show, because it is basically a film. So I assumed that Control movie would be based out of the UK because the game takes place in London, that features English actors and all that. But no, they are actually based out of Switzerland. But apparently one of their first hurdles in making Late Shift was funding. I don't know if y'all know this. Filming a movie is expensive. And this movie is filmed with cinema quality stuff. This movie was shown in the theaters with pads where people could vote on what the choice was going to be, which sounds really cool. I wish I could have seen that. That would have been fun. But so they needed money. They needed money to fund filming this. And apparently the Swiss government actually has subsidies that can be provided for film production. They're very big into films being produced by their citizens. But when they applied for this, they actually got turned down because in the government's eyes, this was not a movie. It was a video game. And that didn't apply.
I mean, yeah, for how you're going to distribute it, it makes sense. You're just doing a different kind of game.
Yeah, pretty much. It's weird because this game kind of skirts the middle. On one hand, all of the production was film production. But it's a video. I don't know. It's weird. According to Tobias Weber, the game's director, they did eventually get support from a creative fund called Pro Helvetia. He said that this was because when they went to these people, they did see the potential in what they were making. They were marketing this as the world's first fully interactive film. Like, this wasn't being marketed as a game, even though it was released on every gaming platform possible. But overall, the game was largely funded by the development team's own money. And that must have been a lot of money. I found no mention of how much, but one of their main goals was to make the choices and branches as seamless as possible, stating that in the past, concepts like this had sort of paused the movie while you made your decision. But that is not the case in Late Shift. It sort of gives you a little bit of time to pick, but things are still happening while you're deciding. And then once you've decided, it happens immediately, like seamlessly. Quote, "We were convinced that it would be important for the audience to stay immersed in the film. We wanted them to be under the same amount of time pressure as the main protagonist. Life, too, does not wait. No decision is also a decision." The script for Late Shift was co-written by Weber and Michael R. Johnson, who, up to that point, this is really fun, had been most well known for writing the screenplay for 2009's Sherlock Holmes, the Robert Downey Jr. movie. Which, that's a good movie. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah.
The two had gone to film school together, apparently, which is how they knew each other. And Weber had come up with the ideas for the mechanics and also the basic story, and he wrote the first draft. And then Johnson apparently sat down and finalized it, and his version was the one they specifically used for filming. According to Joe Sorobutz, who plays Matt, when asked about the script, he said, quote, "The script is a fucking flowchart. It's 900 pages of flowcharts." And he specifically says that he panicked when he first saw it, which I imagine I would too. 'Cause, like, I found a short making of featurette online called 1001 Late Shifts. It's on YouTube. It's like 10 minutes long. And that's where a lot of this information comes from. And filming was apparently like really demanding for both the actors and the people on the crew, because they would have to be told like, all right, so this is the version of the scene where you haven't done this and you didn't do this, but you did do this and this did happen. And so like even members of the crew were like, yeah, we would lose track of what we were doing sometimes because we had to film so many different versions and so many different like alterations of different scenes, and it just got all muddled together sometimes.
Well, and that sounds awful because, you almost have to think like the actors have to be told on the spot and memorize their lines on the spot. Think of it this way. General rule of thumb for a film screenplay is 1 page equals about a minute of film action.
Mm-hmm.
What, you want to talk about 900 minutes of film action? Like, there's no way you can memorize all of that. So, wow. Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
There's a section of that little featurette where Matt's actor is standing on set, and you can hear the crew being like, all right, so. And he's like, so this is the version of the scene where I haven't made the phone call, but I have done this. And they're like, yes, that's the one we're shooting, I think. And it sounds like a nightmare. But it all worked out in the end. Late Shift was reviewed overall rather well upon release, though some of the reviews did tend to fluctuate. Its highest Metacritic being a 79 on PC, Switch and Xbox are around a 72, 73, I think. But then on PS4, it is a 59.
Ooh.
And I don't know what happened specifically in the PS4 sector to like tank the score that much, but I found that kind of interesting. A lot of critics praised its surprisingly really well done quality. Like it feels like a cinematic film, like 100%, bar none. And this was in 2016. And also, like, the concept is very interesting. I think Erica probably does it a little bit better. Bandersnatch does it a little bit better. But, like, this was kind of a fresh concept when it came out overall. But critics were also very quick to point out that it has a good amount of continuity errors if you think about it for a little bit too long. Not like a good amount, but there are some things where, like, that doesn't make sense. And I imagine part of that stems out of the nightmarish filming process.
Yeah, probably.
If I had to take a guess. But also sort of criticized its length, which usually I'm not super down with criticizing a game's length. But like I said, a single run of Late Shift is about half an hour. It can probably get up there an hour count if you like immediately go back and like, all right, I want to go for this ending now, and I want to make this decision now. But I don't think it's varied enough to do that on your own over and over and over again, personally. It did win a few awards, though. One being and I'm going to mispronounce this, and I'm so sorry, a BAFTA Cymru Award for Best Game. I didn't know what that was, so went to look it up. It is apparently the Welsh branch of the BAFTAs, which I've never heard of.
Might also be a little homerism there. Just saying, Wales Interactive.
Maybe
a little home cooking, but yeah, sure.
It also won Best Mobile/Tablet Game and Most Creative and Original at the Game Connection Development Awards. Again, never heard of them. How do we keep finding new award shows?
Right? Jeez, wow.
We are almost like a year and a half into this show, and we're still learning about new awards shows. And it also won Best Narrative at BIG Festival Brazil. It was nominated for Visual Design at the International Mobile Gaming Awards, Action/Adventure Game at the Independent Game Developers Association Awards, and Writing/Narrative Design and Gameplay Innovation at the Develop Awards. Again, there's a lot of award shows, and I've only heard of one of them, being the IGDA. So, let's talk about the composer of Late Shift, because I think the soundtrack is a pretty good part of the game. I think it stands out pretty all right, and that composer's name is Cyril Boehler. All of this information comes from his About page, because he is not a video game composer. It's once again one of those things where somebody was brought in from another part of the entertainment industry to work on a video game, likely because this was so close to a film already that they might as well get somebody who's used to scoring a film.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense to me. He is the son of a film producer, so according to him, by the time he was a teenager, he had already had chances to write scores for films. And he also makes sure to point out that at the same time, he was playing drums in punk bands. He attended the Berklee College of Music in Boston, where he also had the opportunity to get support and advice from figures like Patrick Doyle and the previously passed Ennio Morricone. He has scored numerous feature films, television films, commercials, documentaries, but Late Shift appears to be the closest he has come to jumping into video games. There's one thing that's also kind of close to that, but it only kind of skirts with the line. And aside from being a composer for things, he also regularly works in the realm of electronic music. He started this under the name Tweak, but then later took on the name Zwicker, and that's the name that he continues to produce under. He has performed in clubs all over Europe, Russia, and South Africa, but he currently resides in Zurich, Switzerland. As for his discography, Late Shift is the only thing I've heard of on his entire discography. Ones that he makes sure to point out on his website, I figure are worth pointing out here. A Swiss TV series called Wilder. Late Shift, obviously. He did a VR experience called Paradise Lost. It was something to do with like a VR experience where you're underwater and looking at like turtles and fish and all that. That's about the other closest thing he's gotten to like video games, but I think that skirts the line even harder than Late Shift does.
Mm-hmm.
And he also did the score for a film called Mulhapar. The soundtrack for Late Shift and for a couple of the other things on that discography list can actually be purchased on Boehler's Bandcamp page, being bandcamp.com/Cyril Boehler. That is CYRIL BOEHLER, all one word. And that's all the information I have for you about the score. To Late Shift, there's no information that I could find. There's not a lot of information on this game in general. I'm actually kind of shocked I found what I did.
Yeah, it's out there as far as a pick, but hopefully we'll get to I'll learn something today.
Yeah. So let's jump into Critical 5, and we're going to start with Late Shift opening. So, as one might expect, this song plays over the opening credits to the game, over a monologue by Matt that generally explains the concept of the game. Choices, every choice matters, the littlest thing can lead to something, blah, 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 blah. And I think this song is actually quite neat. I really, really like the chord progression. This is probably my favorite song in the game. It's got a really nice beat to it. You can definitely hear oh yeah, so this dude is definitely at home in electronic music production.
Yes.
Like 100%. I think this is a good listen all around.
Yeah, I think this one stands out to me as among my favorites as far as, learning about this soundtrack for the first time. And yeah, you're 100% right. Like, yeah, he's very comfortable in producing his own electronic music. But yeah, good layering and good adding of instruments. It's a really chill groove. I like it.
One of the first things that happens is the game is trying to teach you, like, sometimes acting like a jerk will get you treated like a jerk. Where the first decision you make in the entire game is Matt is trying to get to work, and he's in the train station, and he's sort of trying to make it onto the train before it leaves. And a tourist, a foreigner, stops him to ask where a street is, and you have the choice to help him or ignore him and get on the train. And if you help him, then you make it on the train. And if you decide to ignore him, he'll like impede you more, and the train will leave, and you won't be on it. And it's one of those things. But yeah, this song in conjunction with a bunch of like shots of London, very interesting piece. But after that, we have critical track number 2. That is Choi Action. Now I'll be real, from here, I don't know where these songs play. The unfortunate side effect of the game basically being a movie is I can't just pause a movie to listen to the music. So, you're a little busy when these songs play.
And then it's also dependent on what choices you make, so it may not even appear in your run.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I don't know exactly where most of these play. Some of them I kind of have some guesses. For instance, I would assume that this plays during a sequence in which the Chois are involved.
And maybe you're running away from them.
Maybe. I think you're probably running away from them. I don't remember Matt ever getting into an action sequence at any point in the game. I really actually like this song. It has really cool instrumentation. The heavy percussion is like, it makes it an easy standout among everything else, and I think just really drives this sort of intense feeling. And I'm always really down with songs where it's like, oh yeah, the main instrument is the drum.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is. And yeah, it sounds like if you're running away from a Chinese mob group. Yeah, no, I really like it. I think it fits to kind of show the chill vibe of the previous piece, and then like action, intensity on this one. It's good variety.
Yeah. Speaking of variety, we're going to bring it down once again for critical track number 3. It's Soar. That's S-O-R-E, not S-O-A-R. If you're watching the video, you already know that. But if you're not, if you're listening to the audio version, it's like, ow, I'm sore, not I'm soaring through the sky.
I mean, it better not be soaring through the sky with this music. Jeez.
I think that this song plays in a sequence that takes place in the aftermath of a really bad car crash.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing that draws me to this song the most, it's either that or a really intense scene where you are being interrogated by the choice, and you have to make a choice that's pretty screwed up to make somebody choose. But I think what really draws me to this song is the chimes. Like, the use of the chimes is so good. It's this very low-key, intense song, and then you've got these distorted tones behind it, and then suddenly you've got these chimes as well. I don't know. It gives it a really unique feel. I can't think of a song that I've heard that sounds exactly like this.
Yeah, I think disorienting is a really good word for it. I was like, you sure this doesn't play like in Silent Hill?
It does kind of sound like it could.
Because I kind of get that vibe for sure. It definitely is another big swing, and it shows you the versatility of playing it like a film. Though that being said, it's different in the sense that this must have been composed straight up and down, as opposed to relying on different stems to be played depending on what you choose. If this is all scripted like a movie, how it sounds in the soundtrack is going to sound like how it does in the scene in the game.
Yeah, pretty much. And from there, we're going to go to critical track number 4, which is yet another tone shift. In fact, all 5 of them, I believe, are tone shifts for the one before them, which, nothing wrong with that. Critical track number 4 is You're a Blank Book. I have absolutely no idea where this plays. I don't even have a guess. But this is another very intense song. And I just really, really like this a lot. This is another one that really shows off Boehler's prowess with electronic music. Like, it really shines through here. But, like, to me, this feels like something I'd hear in a stealth game during, like, a really intense boss sequence. Or something like that.
I don't know about a boss per se, but yeah, pegging it in a stealth game is a good pick. Maybe just like an elevated cause of concern and attention.
Maybe. Like something is actively hunting you or something like that.
Mm-hmm. There's
nothing like that in Late Shift. There's no like robot that bursts through a wall to hunt Matt down or anything. It's very grounded. But that's kind of what it reminds me of. I like this song a lot. It's fun.
Yeah, good vibes. And then it's this prowess of layering instruments here. Like, you're starting with that bass, and then it's the the snare, the drum, the percussion, building a rhythm, and then you're adding another instrument on top of it and just building the soundscape even more. It's really, really cool. I like this one too.
And last but not least, we have critical track number 5, Late Shift Requiem. This is either the credits theme or it just plays during the endings. I know for a fact it plays during some of the endings. That I did make sure to go look up. And it just has a very different feel even from the rest of the soundtrack. As far as I'm aware, there's no really great, amazing ending to Late Shift. There's no the best ending. I've only seen like 3 or 4 of them. There's endings where Matt goes to jail, Matt dies, Matt walks out, but like you can tell that, oh man, this is gonna stick with you for a while, huh, bud? Mei Ling can die and Matt can survive. They can both die. There's a bunch of stuff that can happen. And they all sort of end with this underlying implication that this is not just gonna end for Matt overnight. Like, he made a crime family angry. And at some point, he might have committed murder, depending on your options and depending on your choices. It really just depends. And so I think that this song really reflects that really well, even though the start feels kind of like almost circus-y in a way. It's weird. I don't know if I dig the start, but I like once the strings come in this one, you really start to feel like, oh yeah, this is a good piece. I really like it.
Yeah, and that's what we got for the clip here. I feel like, yeah, the strings defining these 16th notes and like a repeating pattern. And then again, adding more instruments, building it in, the chord progression, that it's almost like a sense of foreboding, but I do feel like there is also at the same time a sense of like consequence for your actions. Like, so I could see it being an ending. Like, yeah, it's building up to something that you don't know what's going to happen, but there's a finality to it.
Yeah. I think it fits very well the tone of this game in general and the tone of most of the endings. And speaking of endings, the cutting room floor. I got 2 songs. The first one is Wanted. This one is actually one of the only ones on the soundtrack, or at least on the list for the show, that was actually co-composed by Boehler and one other person, being Harry Herkenroth. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This song feels like it's supposed to be playing during some impassioned, inspiring speech. There is no moment like that in Late Shift that I can think of, so maybe this plays during one of the better endings, I don't know. But I like this song a lot.
It does have a positivity to it, now that you mention it. Yeah, huh.
Yeah, I have no idea where this could possibly play, but it really like struck a chord with me when I was listening through the soundtrack to make this list. So, hey, yeah, it's good. And then, because I kept hearing it in like promotional material, and I think this is the credits theme of the game. Let's go. No, not Pikachu and Eevee. Matt and Mei Ling. This is a very short song. It's like 46. Like the clip is half the song, I want to say. But it almost hit the critical 5 because I just keep hearing it. It's featured in the short making of video that I mentioned. like near the end of it. So obviously I think Boehler liked it, or somebody on the crew really liked it. So why not? Deserved some mention at least. Very intense electronic song though.
Yeah, again, it's Boehler showing his craft and what he knows and tinkering around on a synthesizer.
Pretty much. And he's real good at it. So what? Well, I never forget about Late Shift. It is, again, very high quality film. It's an interesting little experiment in how to do a game like this. I don't think seeing several studios jump on games like this is cost effective or smart, but I would say I'd be super down with seeing more people do stuff like this. Like Netflix has jumped on it a lot with a couple of stuff like this since Bandersnatch. Erica obviously came out last year and was very interesting. I kind of wish I'd been able to see it in a theater. That sounds really neat, actually. With the tablets and everything. I wonder if they would have shown it multiple times, though. Because, again, it's like half an hour long. So, I believe it was shown at some film festival in London. I'm not 100% on that, though. I don't think it's a game that you need to go out and buy right now. You're not missing something in your life if you're not playing Late Shift immediately. It's not the case. But if it sounds neat and you have a little bit of time in your hands, I think it is a fun little experience, a fun little time. I do think, though, that the ideal place for this game is in a room full of friends where everybody's helping make the decisions together, and obviously not super in the cards at this exact moment in time. But maybe when that opens up, if this interests you, definitely recommend it for a small evening get-together.
Yeah. For as much as I liked Erica last year, it's good to have this on my radar. I'm not necessarily going to go out and get it right away, but I'm glad that I've learned about it. Thank you for teaching us about it, because Late Shift as a title meant zero to me before this.
And also, it's really hard to search for a game called Late Shift.
Oof. Isn't that the truth with so many games? Yeah.
Unsurprisingly. So, for our transition, we usually like to highlight a fan remix or cover. Guess what? Surprise, there's none for this game. Because this is not a soundtrack that is widely talked about. It's not even a game that's widely talked about, as evidenced by Peter and probably most of you listening having never heard of it. So I just decided to throw in what would have been the third song on the cutting room floor if I had one. And also, I get to give a shout out to my favorite character in the game. The song is called Mei Ling's Truth, so please enjoy that, and we will be right back.
All right, let's talk about a different representation of video games, this time through virtual reality and a platformer as such. Let's talk about ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission. ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission was released on October 2nd, 2018 for PlayStation VR. This is a PlayStation 4 exclusive, a PlayStation VR exclusive. So, if you have not heard of ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission, that is probably why, if you're not familiar with the PlayStation VR ecosystem. It is developed by SIE Japan Studios' Asobi team and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. So, ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission is a third-person virtual reality platformer. You play as this big robot presence that uses the DualShock 4 controller to help guide Captain Astro through this platforming level. A lot of it often progresses in the Z-axis, moving forward into the screen, like the level scrolls that way. And you have to help Astro search for his friends. Now, your head positioning with the VR visor mounted on it controls the camera. So you can even look behind you if you twist yourself enough, depending on how much you move. But you control Astro, little robot character, with the left analog stick as you hold the DualShock 4 controller. You can also control Astro to attack enemies. You can also jump and then hold jump again to hover over to places where his friends may be hiding. You can sometimes hear them with the 3D audio, like, oh, someone may be nearby. Where could they be? Let's look around the level environment. Oh, there they are. Let's go get them. And then Astro gets to attack his friends, give them a little boot, and then they fly into the DualShock 4 controller. See, the controller is an ever-present object in the world, and it mirrors how you move the controller itself because of the light bar positioning and the PlayStation camera. So you can move the controller and use it for a variety of contextual tools that are based on set moments in the level. So you can use a hook shot. You can spray water with a water gun. You can do a little flick to send out shuriken stars. Things like that. When you move Astro forward enough in the level will auto-scroll forward along that Z-axis. And then you also have a space chameleon hidden in each level. And the player can look around and spot them based on a 3D audio clue. Spotting this chameleon unlocks a challenge version of the stage. So it can essentially double the length of the game if you really want it to. The plot of Astro Bot Rescue Mission is so very simple. Captain Astro and his 212 friends are traveling in their spaceship when an alien appears. This snot-like monster grabs the spaceship and starts tearing it apart and shaking it, scattering Astro's friends and the ship's main parts across the galaxy. Can Astro put the pieces of the ship back together and bring his friends safely home? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Astro Bot Rescue Mission?
This is where it's my turn to say, never heard of this game before now.
Wow.
I think you've mentioned it once or twice on past episodes, but that's as far as I've gotten in terms of hearing about this game at all. We have never owned a VR anything, PSVR included, which maybe one day, I'm thinking about an Oculus Quest, maybe one day, if it wasn't $400. But yeah, so this is not a game that I have any experience with whatsoever, and is also not a game I had heard of until very recently.
That is quite interesting because, yeah, it is one of PlayStation VR's best games. I wouldn't say it's the best experience I've ever had in virtual reality. I'll still chalk that up to super hot VR, especially if you get to play on HTC Vive with the room scale. That is choice. That is excellent. However, Astro Bot Rescue Mission is just a quality, well-made title that really sets a high bar for what a 3D platformer can be like in virtual reality. It's so impressive. So many cute, charming moments. And the soundtrack is one where I go back and listen to it and it's like, I forgot how great this soundtrack is. So it was definitely one I wanted to talk about at some point. And yeah, if you are not familiar with the PlayStation VR ecosystem, I can get totally missing this or having a big blind spot to it. But the character of Astrobot or the bots, these little white robots with black visors like the PlayStation VR visor and little blue eyes, it's kind of iconic in a way to the PlayStation VR setup, the ecosystem there. And yeah, it's an important character and becoming more and more important, especially as 2020 rolls on here. Because it all starts with a game called The Playroom. And The Playroom was a collection of augmented reality mini-games that was developed by Sony Computer Entertainment Japan Studios' Asobi Team. Asobi Team was formed back in 2012, and the Playroom was released in 2013 as a title that was pre-installed on PlayStation 4. It was basically used as a way to show the features of the PlayStation camera, if players had it, and the DualShock 4 controller. But yeah, it really introduced these cute little white robots with the black visors and the blue eyes. I think they're almost like Minions in a way, but much cuter and much less annoying than Minions. But there can be a lot of them, and they're adorable. Just think cute PlayStation Minions, I guess. Then in 2016, the Playroom VR was launched, and it's a free title that is also another collection of mini games. But this was designed for virtual reality and the launch of PlayStation VR, also developed by Asobi Team. One of these mini games, called Robot Rescue, had the player control one of these cute little bots to find 20 of his friends who were hidden in a 3D environment. It sounds familiar. See, the minigame concept was so well regarded, with both popular demand and fan feedback, that it inspired Asobi Team to make a full-fledged adventure expanding on this idea. So ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission was developed in 18 months by a team of 25 people, and when it launched, it reviewed very well with a Metacritic score of 90. If anything, if there's any critiques to it, the game is very easy, and it really only takes about 4 to 5 hours to complete. Some people considered it a stripped down approach, and I think that's because of, honestly, the relative infancy of VR platforming games. But it was the highest reviewed VR game as of July 2019, and I think, if anything, Half-Life Alyx is the only game that has surpassed it since.
Which I've heard very good things about Half-Life Alyx, so that doesn't super surprise me.
Oh, yeah, I mean, with Valve's special index controllers and that it does, like, finger tracking and things like that, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It's a well-known franchise. But this little game, it's so cute and charming, and it does so many things so well. Just a great, great title. It won Best VR AR Game at the Game Awards that year. It was nominated for 3 BAFTAs, including Best Game, and it was nominated for 4 DICE Awards, Best VR AR Game at the GDC Awards, and it had 2 nominations at the South by Southwest Gaming Awards. If there's any legacy to Astro Bot and Captain Astro and his big old rescue mission, Astro's Playroom, see, combining Astro and the Playroom, do a new experience. It is now a non-VR platformer follow-up that will be preloaded on PlayStation 5. So when that presumably launches holiday 2020, players can continue the journey of Captain Astro, not in VR, of course, this time, but, 4 worlds where you could get to do some more 3D platforming. And this time it explores the new aspects of the PlayStation 5 console, but particularly the different aspects of the DualSense controller, the new types of haptic feedback, the sensitive spring-loaded triggers that allow for different things. So again, Astro being used as like an introductory kind of character for a new console and a small little adventure, but yeah, that'll be Astro's Playroom. So Astro and his adventures live on in some form. The composer to the soundtrack for Astro Bot Rescue Mission is Kenneth Young, or sometimes he's known as Kenny Young or Kenneth C.M. Young, but Kenneth Young was born in Edinburgh, Scotland. He had a musical upbringing when he was young. He was classically trained in violin starting at 6, and he was immersed in both traditional Scottish and Appalachian folk music at a young age. But he did not choose performance as a career. Instead, he went on to earn an undergraduate degree in music technology at the University of Edinburgh. Then he gained an MA in sound design at Bournemouth University. He began his professional career in 2004, working as a junior sound designer at Sony London Studio. So he worked as a sound designer for different projects like The Getaway, Black Monday, 24, The Game, different iToy games, among others. And he was even a dialogue dubbing editor on Heavenly Sword. He really called the experience a baptism by fire for working in the game industry and game audio. But he left Sony in 2007 to join up the startup dev team Media Molecule to establish their audio department and, quote, make Little Big Planet sound awesome. He also writes about game audio. He started the website gamesound.org in 2005, quote, as a useful resource for those who work in, aspire to work in, or wish to learn more about game sound. In fact, he's won awards from GANG, the Game Audio Network Guild, for his articles The Use of Voice in Portal 2 from 2012 and The Mix in The Last of Us from 2015. In February 2015, he pursued a freelance career, and he's inspired by plenty of different types of music. Quote, I have a soft spot for easy listening, James Taylor, Jim Croce, including cheesy and inappropriate covers of pop songs, space-age pop, Esquivel, he notes, library music, funk, anything with a strong and unique retro sound is right up my street. The other strong musical influences and loves are folk music, particularly traditional Scottish and Irish music, but also Appalachian old-time and bluegrass, blues, pre-bop jazz, and the late classical / early romantic and Baroque periods. That mostly comes from my background as a fiddle player and violinist, but also the music I studied as a student. Today he lives near London with his wife, son, and daughter, and you can follow Kenneth Young on Twitter at KCM Young. His discography, definitely a good chunk of Media Molecule projects. He composed music for Little Big Planet 1 and 2, and then his different tracks and special thanks and whatnot were carried into other Little Big Planet games like 3, Karting, Vita, and Run Sackboy Run. He also composed music for Tearaway, as well as Tearaway Unfolded, a game called Tethered, Wonderworlds, and of course, ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission. He also worked on most of the core of Dreams' audio direction. Before he left Media Molecule and became freelance, he worked on Dreams quite a bit. He is also the audio director on Knights and Bikes, which is developed by Foam Sword, and they're a British developer made up of, you guessed it, former Media Molecule staff. He may be doing the music for Astro's Playroom. Hasn't really been announced or confirmed, but it wouldn't surprise me if he got to do a follow-up kind of sequel there. And he's also worked in some animation projects like Big Finds a Trumpet and Herman Brown is Feeling Down, which is just a great title.
Yeah, I've never heard of either of those, but Herman Brown is Feeling Down is a fantastic award-winning title, just in general.
Just fantastic. Kenneth Young said that the brief for ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission, the overall concept of what the team was looking for, was a playful, cool, and digital-sounding soundtrack that would appeal to core gamers while still being accessible to a larger audience. So, how does he translate that? He describes ASTRO BOT's tunes as the creation of, quote, an upbeat and playful soundtrack infused with apt digital touches such as robotic voice, chiptune, and glitch, nicely rounded off with a warm, fuzzy, retro glow. So I think he kind of crushed it there. He describes these digital touches as, quote, retro future technology. And in a way, it really strikes this balance between, like, the cold metal nature of robots, but also you don't want it to get, like, too saccharine, too kiddie, too ultra sweet. So it's finding that good balance there with some retro tunes that may evoke memories of other games and other game studios, but adding these little, the chiptune, the glitch, the robotic voice, adding these little things in there. He saw videos of the levels in action, but never really like a build of the game, though he could visit Sony in London to see his music in the context of the game at any time for any tweaks that needed to be made. So what does this soundtrack sound like for ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission? Let's get to our 5 critical tracks. We gotta start with the first one here, 12 Bar Bot. This particularly plays in the opening level of the game. It also is included in a few more of these World 1 city-like levels, I guess, if you had to kind of describe it. Oh, but it's such a bouncy and energetic piece. And then you get to this part of the, what did you say your name was? Yeah. And it's like that whole like little motif. Like this song as a whole, I think is like the best encapsulation of Astro Bot's soundtrack. I think you can definitely hear like the Media Molecule Little Big Planet inspired sort of touches here. But for what it's worth, it's Kenneth Young's voice being processed at the yeah part. Wow. Hearing this song brought me right back to playing this game. And I'm like, oh yeah. No, I had to talk about this soundtrack on this show.
I know while preparing for this episode, you mentioned to me that this some of the parts of this soundtrack have very Jet Set Radio feelings to them. This is Jet Set Radio.
Yes, absolutely.
Like the use of samples and stuff. It like obviously Hideki Naganuma is not the only composer in the world to use samples, but like that's what comes to mind when I hear this song. Is this is like very Naganuma-esque.
Yeah, I think that's another very good comparison because yeah, like the digital, the sampling. It's like the hard cuts on some like you feel like it's cut off and edited and mixed in some way. Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. We get comparisons to Jet Set Radio, and then you kind of dive in like the retro vibes. And I think when we were talking about this a few days ago in preparation for the episode, a lot of Rare vibes. Rareware from number 2 on the Critical 5 here. This is Tight Mites. This has a subtitle of Crystal Cave, and it's the cave levels in the game. Later cave levels kind of riff off of this and add some different instrument sounds and a little bit of remix, but like this is particularly like the first cave level when you go underground in World 1. So it's another really memorable one where like the environment's changed up drastically, the music sounds totally different, and it's this slow groove. With the low synth beats kind of behind it. And then you get to this lighter, again, just nice, chill, but you're grooving here. And when we mentioned Rare, I get big Donkey Kong Country vibes to it. If those songs were like modernized for more electronic instruments. Young plays melodica on this track in particular.
Yeah, this is a really, really neat song. I think this is my second favorite song on the Critical 5, like, for sure. I do agree that it sort of has a like modern Donkey Kong Country feel to it. It's this and one other song where I did mention like this feels like Rare, like old school Rare style music back when they were making like banjo and Donkey Kong stuff and all that. And yeah. It's got a really nice groove, a really good beat. I like this song a lot.
Yeah, but just really encapsulates that cave feel very well.
And also, if its subtitle is Crystal Cave, there's a world in DK64 called Crystal Cave. I see you.
Well then, maybe it's a little more on the nose than we thought.
I doubt it. That's not the most original name in the world.
Moving on to number 3 on the Critical 5. Oh yeah. We got some intensity here. This is Bite It. Bite It plays during the first boss battle. This is the gorilla boss in World 1. See, in the 5 worlds, they end with a boss that is like this big bad animal in a way. And actually, the boss tune is the same, but the instrumentation is mixed up based on what animal, what kind of boss you're facing. So because this is the first one that you hear, and I feel like it gets right into it and really lets you know, like, you're in a boss battle, there's some intensity here, really just gets you amped here. Apparently, the lead guitar on these tracks is a virtual guitar. It's not a real one. Kenneth Young wanted to have them sound more sampled, artificial, and, quote, gamey, which is why sometimes they're also doubled up with 8-bit sounds. He also made a comment about the importance of why this tune, this melody, was repeated so often for the boss battles. He says the importance of repetition overall in this game, it's particularly because it was essentially a new IP, and, quote, we weren't able to rely on the audience's familiarity with established melodies and that dopamine hit that you get when you hear music that you already know. So because Astro Bot is this new thing, they wanted there to be that familiarity with songs that you know, but they had to do it based on repeating certain tracks throughout the game. Thus, the boss theme. Apparently, the World 2 boss, the octopus version, was the first iteration of this track, but I feel like not only does Bite It, this gorilla boss version, get you into what this sounds like, it establishes that core melody for a boss fight, but I just get really excited to listen to this one.
This is the first one you sent me when we were talking about this episode, and I think it's still my favorite on the list, just in general. This is the one where I was like, this has like a weirdly old school rare feel to it. This was the original one that I said that for. I don't know, yeah, this song's really good. Like, really, really good. I haven't listened to any of the other boss variations of it, but, like, this is some good stuff.
They're pretty similar, but yeah, just slight different remixes on it. But yeah, wow, such an exciting piece. And it was one where I was showing you, like, I forgot how great this soundtrack is. It's so good. Number 4 on the Critical 5. This is called Disco Tree. This plays on these levels that are like jungle-like, big vines that are growing up. They're tree-like levels, but especially starting in World 2. And man, I'm a sucker for disco vibes, like disco mixes of songs, or songs that are really trying to channel a disco area with like a certain electronic vibe to it. The bass guitar, where it's really heavy. Kenneth Young plays bass guitar on this track. And this one, as well as Tight Mites, are among Young's favorites on the soundtrack. But yeah, wow. It was another one where, like, again, I remember playing these levels in particular in this game and really liking the sound of it. It's a catchy one for sure.
Why are jungles and disco such a really interesting combination that I can't like name anything off the top of my head, but I'm positive this is not the only game to like make that sort of connection.
Yeah.
Why is that such a good combination? I don't know, but this song is great. It's absolutely, it's got that nice groove to it. I don't know. I can't say anything else that you haven't already said. This song is great.
Yeah, you get the high strings in there, just like this refreshing little da-da, ba-ba. It's just like, it really fleshes out the whole piece. It's so good. Gotta wrap up the Critical 5, though, with number 5, I Am Astro Bot. after the main part of the credits, where you're running around as Astro and you're beating up enemies and all that, you suddenly get control of the DualShock controller and its light bar, and then bigger credits appear with specially colored letters in there, and you get to fire endless, like, paintballs in a way. Like, you get to shoot the credits. This is the song that plays when you're shooting at credits. You get a trophy for, like, hitting Shuhei Yoshida's name. It's fantastic. It's just a delightful way to end the game. It's full of positive energy, and, like, that's this song completely in a nutshell. Kenneth Young's processed voice is featured in the "oh yeah" kind of part of the song, but the lyrics, the Astro Bot, I am Astro Bot, those are computer synthesized. So it's not always Kenneth Young's voice, but he kind of tinkers with, like, the Microsoft Sam, a little bit equivalent, as it were.
The way you spoke the Kenneth Young is the "oh yeah," all that brought me back to was Neverhood. Anyway.
Yeah, I gotta listen to that episode for sure.
But yeah, no, this song is great. It's very high energy. I could definitely see, like, that being fun. Shooting the credits, it's a very Smash thing.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more fun than doing it in Smash. Sorry, Smash. And yeah, I dig this song a lot. This whole Critical 5 is fantastic and very catchy. And yeah, this game has a really neat soundtrack, and I'm glad you brought it.
Yeah. I'm really excited that I remembered how good it was, and I got to share it with the show here. But let's get to the cutting room floor. First track here is Follow Me Into the Storm. So this song plays in some jungle and tree levels as well in World 2, just to mix it up a little bit, but also some in World 4. Technically, I Am Astro Bot is like a sped up version of this track, like higher energy, but especially at the beginning of the piece here, which is where the clip is from, it just feels so much lighter in its instrumentation. And it's another one when you hear it, it's like, oh, yep, that's another really memorable one. That's a classic from this game, but just barely missed the cutting room floor. I think because of the repetition of I Am Astro Bot and how great that end credits sequence is. Young plays the rhythm and lead guitar on this track. He also has more processed vocals, but that's not featured in this clip. It's later in the piece. And a lot of people, especially in YouTube comments, point out that it's reminiscent a little bit of Muse's Starlight. I get that. I totally get that.
I could hear it, yeah.
The other one on my cutting room floor is A Fire in Your Mind. Let's go! Metal, baby! Plays during volcano levels, because where else? When you get that ja-ja-ja-ja kind of guitar going, you gotta have fire in the background, and it's a fire in your mind. Kenneth Young plays the guitars, the rhythm, lead, and bass on this track, and also those are his processed vocals for the lyrics. In fact, this song was award nominated at the Hollywood Music and Media Awards. It was nominated as Best Original Song. So again, another one that was really close to making the Critical 5, but it's such a strong Critical 5. It's such a solid soundtrack, but I still had to mention this one for sure.
It's definitely rockin' and definitely, You're right. When there's fire involved, it's always this sound, and I love it, though.
Yeah, it's got to be for those volcano platformer levels for sure. What will I never forget about ASTRO BOT Rescue Mission? I often, especially after beating it, and I still like to make the comparison to this day, it may be off base, but damn it, I like to call it the Super Mario 64 of VR platformers. Like, Super Mario 64 was groundbreaking at the time for showing how you do a platformer in 3D space. This shows how you do a 3D platformer in a virtual reality space. It is so good. Yeah, it's a simple game. It's a short game, but it's filled with all these fun moments. You sometimes have to like bash your visor on something in the world because, again, you're a perpetual part of the world, whether it's holding the controller and sometimes it's fourth wall breaking back at you. But looking around this environment to find Astro's friends, to find the Space Chameleon, and then still have the wherewithal to control Astro with the left analog stick and jumping and hovering. It's such a good time. And I feel like, yeah, it's not as industry shaking and groundbreaking as Super Mario 64, but it's such a definitive title that shows like this is how you handle this type of game in such a fledgling space.
Now, granted, I don't think anything can ever be as groundbreaking as Mario 64 ever again. Because, like, that was a whole... Until we have, like...
4D games.
Yeah. Like, until we hit that point, we're not getting another Mario 64 for sure. But maybe one day I'll be able to play it. I don't really foresee myself getting a PSVR anytime soon. I think if I do get a VR, it's going to be an Oculus Quest. Maybe not, though, because they're owned by Facebook, and I'm not down with that. But we'll see one of these days.
Yeah, I think at the very least, like, if you are eventually going to get a PlayStation VR, I would wait for the second iteration of the visor on PlayStation 5. I think now's not the best time to get into that space. Granted, PlayStation VR will carry over to PlayStation 5, but I'd say wait for the newer tech, and then Astro Bot is surely one that will carry over. Or, you know, watch a Let's Play. Like, it's a delightful game to watch as a Let's Play. Just see all the cool little things that they do in that game and enjoy that soundtrack, because, oh, I'm so glad I got to bring it to the show.
The main reason I'd get a PSVR anyways is for Tetris Effect and Resident Evil 7, so that one can hypnotize me and the other can make me incredibly motion sick.
Also, very good games for that platform. So, talking about games that are really trying new things with video games, putting different spins on it, an interactive movie, virtual reality platformer, but also really, really cool soundtracks and, yeah, games that we had no idea about with each other, but we definitely learned something. Hopefully you did listening as well. So that'll do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at TheDobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com, but it's really that MP3 podcast version that you want. Available on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's also where Joe's other show, Smash Your Pieces, is hosted. And you can find those on podcast services around the globe. You can find Original Soundchat on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, anywhere that has podcasts, including Spotify, where we not only have a podcast episode feed, but also a Spotify playlist where if we talk about a song from a video game and it's on Spotify, it gets added to that big Spotify playlist. What's getting added this week, Joe?
For the first time in a while, both games are on Spotify.
Yes!
It's been a really long time since that happened. I don't even remember what it was.
Great songs to add to that Spotify playlist. And I've been traveling for work, so I've worked ahead a few weeks in our episodes and research, so maybe we'll free up some time to do some bonus tracks coming your way. Fingers crossed. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Atsushi Kitajo.
I will be talking about Mitsuhiko Takano. What could have been next week?
Could have been nothing particular.
What could have been indeed. Well, to play us out, there was not much as far as covering the Astro Bot soundtrack, but someone wanted to play guitar along with that boss theme, and that someone is Astrovex on YouTube. So it's one of these ones where it's like the song is playing, but then they're playing guitar alongside it, and they do a really good job. I'm impressed. But here, check out Astrovex's version of the boss theme here on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Sound Chat. We'll see you next time. Take care.